When you're moving to Orlando, one of the things you're going to find out is that you have to avoid the crowds. This city is not short of any other city in Florida, and that it's very, very busy. But guess what it has that a lot of the other ones don't? Tourism. Maybe aside from Miami. But tourism is so heavy here. We have so many people from so many other places that you will find out that certain areas of Orlando are insanely crowded all the time, non-stop. I don't care what time of day you're trying to travel. In this video, we're gonna talk about some key areas that you can maybe consider living in. Now, there's not a specific list, right? Each one of these areas really touches on different parts around Orlando. So don't just focus on the city, but look at the different areas that they are located, because those areas are gonna be potentially where you could be living. But again, it comes down to a lot of different issues that we're gonna cover in this episode. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe, because I'm dropping these videos every single week for you guys help moving here, and you want to be told that this information is here for you every single week. So make sure you do that. Now, getting into it, we're going to get into the first area that I'm going to talk about. But actually, no, you know what? Before I do that, I'm going to talk about some things that you need to understand when I say that it is busy here. It's traffic. So around Orlando, obviously, there are certain areas that are just bottlenecks, which, to be honest with you, is every city. Every city has their bottleneck and their areas that are just a pain in the butt, that just are always crowded. And like for me, where I chose to live in Orlando heading west is the I-4. The I-4 around the Disney World area is, I despise it. Actually, before we did this video yesterday, we just dropped off a family member at the airport. And we got so tired of traffic, it's become a family tradition that when we go to the airport, anytime in the afternoon heading into early evening, we're guaranteed to hit insane 2-hour traffic trying to get back home, that I just say forget it, and we go to Disney Epcot. I don't know why. That apparently is our new tradition in our family, is that when we drop people off the airport, we just say forget it, because I'm just gonna ride out. I'd rather ride out Disney with screaming kids than just stand and stop and go traffic with the same. So understand that there are certain areas around Orlando that are insanely crowded, and it's mainly drivers. Now, I'm not so much talking about getting land and things like that, okay? This video is mainly when I talk about crowded and problems. It's really when it comes to traffic. And you will find out, if you haven't been to Florida, we have some of the craziest drivers I have ever seen. I'm telling you, when you drive every single day, you're going to see something that you're just gonna go, the common phrases, that's illegal. What are you doing? Like, just turn. Why are you slowing down for no reason? I'm telling you, all the above. It is one of the places where, I don't know, in my opinion, it's just a mix of so many different drivers from so many different areas, a very high old population mixed with people who honestly apparently just got gifted a driver's license growing up. And we have a culmination of just craziness. And you will find out as well that your car insurance is one of the most expensive places I've ever been. And I've been in many states for the military. This takes the cake is one of the most expensive ones that I have found so far, at least with the vehicles I have. So the first area we're gonna get into is Winter Springs. Now, Winter Springs, as I look at my map here, I'm also gonna pull this up for you so you can see it. All right, so our first one is Winter Springs. So I'm pulling it up right here. I'm gonna pull this up for you as you see it. So Winter Springs is all the way up here in the northeast part of Orlando. Now, I like this area. Now, this is commonly an area as well. So what you'll see is you have Winter Springs. A lot of people really love Lake Mary as well. So this is one area that I hear a lot when people reach out to us, is they talk about Lake Mary, Winter Springs, things like that. And I like to call it the corridor, right? Like, personally, in my opinion, anyway, from like Winter Springs, Lake Mary, you head all the way over here to Claremont, that whole swath is really just, I consider like more permanent residents of Orlando. It doesn't mean you're not gonna have like, retirees that come during the winter and things like that, but these areas tend to, when you look at public, you can look at public information, it's all available, but their schools tend to be some of the best for public schools. Charter schools tend to do very well here. The crime tends to be lower depending on what neighborhood, of course, you always gotta make sure you check, but these areas tend to be more permanent population around Orlando. Now, the one downfall I will tell you of these areas is that yes, you can get away from crowds. The communities seem to be more stable, less Airbnbs. Honestly, most of these areas have very stringent rules on Airbnbs. Is if you'd like to love to go to Disney a lot, it might be a pain to get to the city. Now, it might not always be the case, right? Because don't forget, and I'm gonna pull the map up right now. when I talk about the I-4, so you have, obviously, when it comes to Disney, let's do this. All right, the whole area of Disney, right? This whole area of the I-4 is constantly under road work, which personally, I don't even know what they're doing at this point because I never see anything getting done. And it's also always packed all the time. Watch, here, let's give a good example. I'm gonna give you guys an example right here. We're doing this live. That could be Davenport or Celebration, whatever. And let's say you wanna go to, you know what, no, better yet, let's say the International Airport. Look, this area, always crowded, always packed, always just, it's such a mess. It is one of those areas that is always just a complete disaster all the time. It can be midnight and you're still gonna have traffic, I promise you. It is always bumper to bumper traffic. I don't even know how they can fix it at this point. There's just so many people that are traveling through these lanes, and it's not even like it's 2 lanes, it's like 3 or 4. It's just always crowded. Now, once you get to the toll road areas, it starts to branch off, you start to have a better time, but I'm telling you, like, it is just some of the worst traffic you're gonna experience, and you definitely wanna make sure that you take care of that. Now, going back to living up here in Winter Springs and Lake Mary, obviously, if you're not going to the parks all the time, it's not a huge issue. If you wanna go to the beach occasionally, Daytona is gonna be closer for you to travel to than, say, heading towards Tampa, which could be make or break you, right? I love Tampa, I love Clearwater and traveling there for weekends and stays and stuff like that, but for some people, they love to go to Daytona. Maybe you're Daytona. Maybe you're in NASCAR. NASCAR, Jesus, I can't talk today. So let me know in the comments how I can't talk. I'd love to hear it. But it's one of those things where, you know, if you prefer the Atlantic over the Pacific or the Gulf, vice versa, that's something you gotta take a note of. Now, obviously this area, that's really it. For the most part, they're not always the cheapest areas of Orlando either in these areas, but you can definitely find them, right? You still have a lot of new construction, you still have great communities, so it's not a bad area. Again, it really comes down to, like all the rest of these areas we're gonna talk about, it comes down to where do you have to travel for work, how often are you going to Disney World or the resorts, if at all. And, you know, honestly, going to the airport, it's not too much different as if you're heading into Polk County, which is where that Davenport example was I just showed you. Now, let's go ahead into the second one. All right, the next area is Winter Garden. So Winter Garden is heading more towards a Disney World, but on the west side of the Orlando in the terms of the city. And this community, we had a family member that moved there as well. People love it. But again, it's one of those things where you're close to Lake Apopka. You're more up there, and sometimes maybe if you want to head straight to the resorts, you can take toll roads. Now, I will tell you, being in these areas like Winter Garden is also a plus because if you're willing to take toll roads, you can get pretty easily down to the 4 to Disney World, and you only have to deal with a little bit of the 4. So it's not like you're having to deal with this whole section of the 4 to deal with the crowds. Now, Winter Garden also has some amazing communities. The one thing I will say when it comes to Winter Garden is when I first, obviously we moved to the Polk County area of Orlando, and when I first went up there, what caught me first is just how less crazy the communities are. When you're in Davenport, Celebration, Kissimmee, like some of those areas are just so crowded and influxed with people who are traveling here temporarily. I mean, the I-7 is like a death road. The 27 there in Davenport, Haines City, heading up towards Claremont is like a death road. There's accidents, literally nonstop. I'm always hearing sirens and stuff go off on that road. But when you head to Winter Garden and places like that, you don't hear that as much because it's more stable communities, I'm telling you. It's a little bit less of that churn. Not that you can't find it, sure. Like it's still Florida as a whole, right? So every area is going to have a level of tourism and things like that. But I'm telling you, Winter Garden, it seems to be one of those great communities. They can also have great schools, great communities. A little more expensive though. So I will say Winter Garden tends to average a little bit higher, especially since they border the Windermere, which again, another great community. And you know, obviously below that you have Dr. Phillips. Like that Dr. Phillips, Windermere, Winter Garden, they tend to be a little more expensive. So depending on what your budget is, it may or may not fit. Now you can find some great gated communities here as well. That's a huge issue for you because obviously one big plus of gated communities, even though I'm not a huge fan, I don't like HOAs and things like that. That's just me. But one plus I will say of gated communities here is it keeps a lot of the riffraff out. And by riffraff, I mean tourists, random people driving who just get lost. It does have a bonus depending where you live. In Winter Garden, you know, take it or leave it. But one thing I do know for certain is Winter Garden can be a great community, especially if you have the budget for it. It can be a place where, look, it's really centrally located. And actually, now that I think about it, there's someone who reached out to us recently who also we are working on that general area, which reminds me, if you are in this situation where any of this information, you're like, Cameron, this is great, I need more of a detailed plan. Well, guess what? Being a licensed agent running our team here in Orlando, most of us are military veterans, which means we have the experience of relocation. We have all done it many times. I've done it in the military, and I've done it out of the military. And that's why we help people like you create full plans from A to Z when it comes to relocating to Orlando and helping you with your real estate decisions as well. So some are popping up below is how you can get a hold of us. You can call, text, email. It does not matter how you get a hold of us. Reach out to us. We will help you work out that plan. We do it every single day. People who are reaching out to us, and I love it. I absolutely do. Relocation and helping people and families move across this great country is one of those things that it's one of those skills that you build in life that you don't know you're going to end up needing it. And I can tell you that I absolutely love doing it for people like you. So reach out, give us a call, let's have a conversation. It's I think one of the greatest things is getting to talk to people like you from around the different country, and honestly, sometimes even the world, and getting to hear different perspectives and opinions. It's awesome. I love it. It's what this country is built on. So reach out, let's have that conversation, and I'm looking forward to it. Now, Winter Garden, again, great, a little bit pricey, but let's move on to the next one. All right, the next one is going to be Lake Nona. Now, if you were looking at the city of Orlando, this is going to be in the southeast section of Orlando. Now, I am going to bring up one other city that I didn't add in this actually now that I think about it, but starting with Lake Nona. So this area actually was probably more famous because you heard about how Disney was originally going to be relocating a ton of its business and its Imagineers and stuff to Lake Nona to bring all of their people out here. Well, what ended up happening, obviously with the political debate and all this craziness, personally, I could give two craps, like it's just Disney, but a lot of people ended up not getting moved from LA out here. And that community was where it was going to be. But Lake Nona, aside from that, is also one of those communities where, again, you are really close to the airport. It's not too annoying to head to Disney. You do, sometimes it can be a little tedious, and not so much on the toll roads to get there. But again, if you want to get there faster, the toll roads tend to be more of an option in this area, I've noticed. Look, I'm just impatient when it comes to traffic, and I call it a convenience tax, and I will pay tolls as able because I don't want to deal with the traffic. So if you want to get faster to the Disney parks and theme parks, you're going to be taking toll roads, and even get to the airport a little bit faster in this area, you're probably gonna be taking toll roads. You don't have to though, just keep that in mind. Maybe if you're impatient like me though, and you just can't stand people, look, sometimes those toll roads they look mighty fine even with that cost, I'm telling you. So pulling up the map here, obviously you can see Lake Nona, here's where it's located, it's right next to the airport. So again, depending what part of Lake Nona you're living in, you could be literally right next to the airport, or obviously with any of these communities, there are outside communities. You could be a little closer to, Buenaventura Lakes. It really depends on what part you're living in, and if you're gonna need to take toll roads, or if you can just take a regular street there, all right? But the one benefit of this area is you are right next to the airport. Again, not out of all the areas in Orlando, I don't find this to be the cheapest for most people when it comes to what's been available on the market currently, so keep that in mind, even if you're renting or purchasing. It's just gonna be a little more pricey than most other areas. But I did say I was gonna throw in another area, and that area is St. Cloud. So I love St. Cloud. We originally were looking at St. Cloud as being one of our options to live when we were looking to relocate to Orlando years ago. The one thing I don't like about it is I find it very tedious to go from St. Cloud to the Disney parks. And as you can see here on the map, obviously St. Cloud is down here. They can be great. Some areas, some homes can be a little more affordable, but it's not the most affordable city for where it's located, in my opinion. You do feel out there, so if you like to go home and not have to really be around people, maybe this could be an option for you. But again, if you're having to go into the city or somewhere else where you travel a lot, I don't know if this is the best option. But again, it comes down what you need, and if you are confused, you can always reach out to us and we can have that conversation. I can pull up a map and be more detailed with your situation. But St. Cloud's nice. Amazing community, but at the same time, I find it a little tedious to get in and out of sometimes, depending how much you're traveling outside of it, that could make or break you. But if you're really just staying in that area, have at it. It could be one of those perfect situations for you. Now, let's head on to the next one. All right, and the next one is actually where we were looking at potentially moving in the near future, and that is Claremont. Claremont, to me, is actually one of the few areas where you potentially could find a home with a basement in Florida. It doesn't always happen, it depends on the area, but it is technically, if you look at a mountain range in Florida, Claremont is one of those cities where it has the potential to it has a little bit of hills to it, which is, I love it. But it's also a great community. Again, it's part of that Claremont all the way to Lake Mary section where you can find great schools and communities. The crime tends to be a little bit lower. I love it. And again, for the crime and school data, look up the public information. It's available to you. Literally just look up crime map, Claremont. Every city has its good and its bad. Relax. School information, a lot of them, when you look up schools and how well they're rated, a lot of time you're only getting the surface information of like how well their testing scores are. So again, take it with a grain of salt. Personally, we homeschool our kids, so it's not something we're concerned about, but hey, you know what? It could be something that's really big for you. Now, Claremont, again, let's pull up the map. Claremont is located right here and heading west of the center of Orlando in terms of downtown. Claremont is not cheap in terms of affordability. It's one of those communities where I do feel like in the next 5 years, it's really gonna expand, because a lot of people who are maybe living south on the 27, they were living in Haines City, Lake Alfred. It's getting so crazy down there, and us included, where Claremont becomes like Claremont, Mineola, Groveland, like all these areas are just really expanding heavily. Now, the one thing I like about Claremont is if you're heading to Disney and you're willing to take a toll road or a toll road to the 27, you can easily get back home and never have to take the 4. It is awesome. And that is the one thing we love about Claremont. Also, if you're heading to the airport, it's not too bad. So let's do this. Let's do Claremont to, let's say you're heading to the airport. All right, yeah. So here's where your bottleneck's gonna be, right here. And that can happen. So you're about an hour from the airport with traffic. So look, there are worse areas, and obviously this is during the peak bad time. Keep in mind, it also depends what part of Claremont you're in. But that being said, there are some potentially better ways to do it. Don't forget, in between Claremont, I'm also gonna throw a bonus in here. You have Horizon West, and Horizon West can have some new construction communities and also some older ones that were built not too long ago. And that can be a great option for you as well. Horizon West, again, heading closer in that area, it's great. I would say that Horizon West, the community doesn't feel as built out as Claremont. I don't know. Claremont just has an amazing feel. I love the small hill aspect to it. It's like a good change of pace for what's here in Florida. So Claremont to me is like a hidden gem. I think it's starting to be discovered. A lot more people are moving there, hence why it's not as cheap to move there anymore as it used to be. But again, it's an amazing city, and I think it can be a great option if you are staying in like the west side of Orlando. Again, Lake Nona, St. Cloud, if you're staying on the east side or in the center of the city, like Lake Mary and the St. Cloud, depending what side of the city you want to be on, I think those can be more beneficial. But again, it really depends. Now, we're gonna look up the last city. Now we're talking about the last city. We already talked about this area already, but I'm gonna talk about this spot a little more specifically, and that's Sanford. Now, if we look up the map, Sanford is just north of Lake Mary. It's between Lake Monroe and Lake Jessup. I don't know why I love saying that, Jessup. So the cool thing, obviously, if you look at a map, you would probably just assume like Lake Monroe, Sanford, Midway, Lake Mary, they're all the same. And you're not entirely wrong. I will tell you the 4 heading down or the 17 can get, congested and crowded. And obviously, if you're heading towards Orlando from any direction, you are going to have issues. Now, when you're just heading north-south, like the outside, like Horizon West, Claremont, or if you're staying in Sanford, Midway, and you're staying in that section, you're gonna be okay. But it's when you're heading towards the city that you're gonna find a lot of these problems during the beginning of the workday and the end of the workday. So just keep that in mind. That's the general rule of thumb for all of these areas. But Sanford, cannot talk this morning. Sanford is one of those areas where it can be a great option as well. Again, just like Lake Mary has great communities, I think it has an amazing feel to it. If, again, you are on the opposite side of Disney World, that is a huge deal for you. This may make or break it for you. But if you're just looking to move to Orlando because you just love the area and you occasionally want to go to the area and you don't care how long it takes you, this can be a great option. And you can find some affordability in these areas, especially if you're broadening out not just Lake Mary or Sanford, and you're willing to expand it across this whole section here between the lakes. You can find some good options there to fit your budget, I promise you. Now, is that changing? The whole world's falling apart at this point, but keep that in mind. Now, to summarize everything, all of these areas are just different sections of Orlando. As I said in the beginning, don't focus on the city, focus on the area, and then sub it down. Like we just had someone who reached out to us recently, and their big issue is they needed a special school for their kids, and that was a big area. So they started with the areas, and then they started looking at the schools inside of them. And then they were calling schools, reaching out to schools, was, as you will find as a parent, can be a pain in the butt out here. They eventually found one that was amazing. They were super communicative and just made them feel at home, even though they haven't even moved here yet. And that is what we based our search off of. But that was after talking a whole communication. And if you're looking to get just a complete breakdown of your plan and what area would potentially serve you best. I mean, with the right conversation, we can almost pinpoint the neighborhood, to be honest with you, after a good conversation. So if you're looking to have that conversation to get assistance when it comes to moving to Orlando, especially with the real estate needs, the number popping up below is how you can reach out to me. You can call, text, or email. It does not matter. Again, we're just veterans and Americans who have made the relocation process. We all understand how it works when it comes to relocating all the time, and we take our specialty and our skills that we built to help you with that plan. Because I can tell you, we wish we chose a different area when we moved to Orlando. We're happy where we live, but at the same time, there are some certain things. I even mentioned how we're even looking at Claremont. It happens, but if you could avoid that pain, it will help you immensely to make you feel more at home and not stressed in that move, especially all the other moving parts that are going to happen. So if that's you, reach out, we can have that conversation. I hope you got value in this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.